All right, so this is going to be a random little fun tutorial, and what this is, it's light painting. If you don't know what it is, you could Google it. There's a lot of information, a lot of video tutorials on YouTube about it. But long story short, the way you typically do it in real life is you adjust your camera setting, your shutter speed, and it holds the shutter open for X amount of seconds that you specify. And the longer it's open, the more information it captures. And you can do is you find a location that's very dark, and what you can do is walk around and kind of light your car with a singular light source. So, for example, here is a GTR I shot, and I walked around with a softbox. It's a strip light. Let's see if I have any strobe shots of it. I think I did. And it's just a very thin strip light. And here we go. So here's a good reference of it. Very thin, narrow. I think it's like 1 by 4 or 2 by 4, something like that, or 1 by 3. And if you hold your exposure open, you could walk around and record the information. So as you could see here, when I walked around, it captured this stuff. And you could do it different angles. More or less in photography, you capture a lot of different exposures and you put it together into one image. So in the end, the final assembly of this shot, let's see how quickly it'll preview. Here we go. So this is how it looked like. There was a pass for the over, for the windows, for the side that did some blending. So you more or less create a fake studio-like shot on location, and you could do this with different light sources. There's a thing called a pixel stick. So let me see if I could quickly find it. So here we go. Shopping images. Okay, so here we go. So here's a pixel stick, and this has like RGB colors. You could load images into it. You walk around, you could shoot whatever you want with it. So a good friend of mine, Ryan, and I'm gonna load up his page here in 1 second. Okay, so here's his Instagram, and he does a lot of light painting. He does strobing and then natural light. So here's an example of his McLaren he shot with the pixel stick. So he loaded an image in it, walked around carefully, and you get the image. You could also do light painting with elements like fire, and so you could get really creative with it depending on what your light source is. So Ryan does a lot of it. He does great work. Check him out. His Instagram name is Hyperpower. So anyhow, what we're gonna try to do is recreate that look and feel in CGI. So of course, you could leave the exposure open, do a motion blur shot, and it will probably take you a while to render. The other thing you can do is fake the look with a light material. So typically what I like to do is, let's say you want to do a thin line. So let's say you had like a strobe or a hand wand. So what you can do is create a shape, a line, and then you kind of just walk around in CGI of how you would on location. And if you have never done this in real life, you're gonna want to experiment or watch more YouTube videos on other photographers that do like a behind the scenes. But in a nutshell, what you would do is you walk around and you create a shape with your light source. So here, for example, is I'm just using a line. I'm creating a box, and you can just walk around. So for example, I'm going to create a very light material and assign it to this box. I'm also going to preview material color. So here we go. So very light material. Gonna assign it. So if I do a preview for the texture, it's not gonna show up if you have an RGB color. So I typically make this black, and then I'll just assign a V-Ray color into here, which will be white as my light source. There we go. So now what I want to do is compensate camera exposure, because I always use exposure settings. And then what you want to do is multiply color by opacity. That makes it see-through. So if, like, let's say you're shooting on location, you have a background, that'll make the background visible through the light source. And then the other thing, so opacity, we're going to put a gradient ramp, like so. Now we're going to turn this option on to preview it. And of course, black is not seen, and then white is seen. So we're just going to kind of go like this, drag it up, like so. Then make this black, feather off the top, and then make this white. So we're kind of creating like a soft box, if you will. There we go, like that. And I'll probably add another black tone right here and just kind of put it on the edge. Just like that. All right. And so the other thing I did do is with my shape, I have generate mapping coordinates on. So now, if I turn on Vray frame buffer and click preview, we're going to see what's going to happen. So it's going to take a second to initiate. There we go. So now as you can see, we have our light source visible. And if you look, you have this little thin line. And then I'll make this extra thin so we don't really get much of that. So what you just want to do is set this tiling to 0.99, 0.99, and that should get rid of it. It might be because it's a 3D object. So what you can also do is typically, let's say you dial in your path and you like what it's doing to a sheet metal, you could just go add a edit poly and remove the backside faces. So while this is nice, I don't like the diffused look. So I am legitimately going to create a solid out of this. So no transparency. So like so. And then what I'm going to do is have fun with my shape. So now I'm just going to move it around and see what it does. I'm going to make this a little smaller in terms of size. Like that. So now we're almost creating kind of like a Kino light look. I'm going to wrap around the front. Maybe lower it some. Like so. Adjust the points a little bit. So you kind of add a movement like you would in real life. However, in CG, the beautiful thing about this is you can look at it real time. In real life, you kind of take a shot, you go back, look at the camera, see what you like, you dislike, and you redo it. So right now, I'm giving me a nice little separation of the rim light of the body. All right. So now what I'm going to do is object properties and uncheck visible to camera. There we go. So now I have my first little Kino light type of look. So now I'm going to do is create another one. Now I'm going to light the side of the car. Like so. Go into the profile. Assign that same material. Select this line. Move it up some. What I am going to do is adjust the angle. So that way I'm facing the car again. Oh, that's not the angle. Here's the angle. All right. Now what I'm going to do is object properties and uncheck visible to camera. Same thing again. Now what we can do is kind of go in and move it around. See what is affecting the car and what's not. And it might have froze, so I'll just restart the RT session again. Let's take a look. Because this is weird. Unless this is getting caused from this light. And again, we could hide it and take a look. So it was casting a weird reflection. So what I can do is go to refine, delete that. There we go. Don't really mind how that's looking. I'm going to move this shape up just to kind of really highlight that edge. All right. So that's looking good. And this is all more or less creative fun. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Again, watch YouTube videos. There's a lot of tutorials on light painting. There's a photographer named Andrew Link. He made a video tutorial, or not video tutorial, a YouTube video tutorial on how to light paint with a light source called an ice light. And that's kind of what we have here in CG's, this thin line. All right, so now let's say you want to bump that up, so increase the intensity of the light. So as you can see, we're getting some really cool looking rim lights, some action on the ground. There we go. So then what we can do is also make it not affect the ground. So I kind of like what I get from the backside, but this light source, for example, is ruining the ground. Now, the way you do this is through V-Ray object properties. All right, so I did pause it. I did some tests and see what does work and doesn't work before I go through and make a long tutorial. So what we want to do is create this into a light source. So let's say you You move your stuff around, you're happy with how it looks. What you want to do is create a Vray light and make it a mesh light like this. And then what we're going to do is go to mesh light, pick mesh, and just click on the shape. So right now it's a spline, so it's not going to work. So what we're going to have to do is, so this is where you make a layer called backups and you back up these objects. But what you want to do is convert to editable poly, reset the pivot point or the X form. So that way when you do select the mesh light, it's going to pop right into place. So now if I preview it, it is now an actual plain light source with a curve to it. Typically when you do the plain light, it's flat. Now we have an actual object. So what we're going to do is exclude our floor from this light. So what we're going to do is go to options, exclude, and my ground is just called ground. There we go. I'm going to stop, turn on preview again. And we're going to check invisible as well because I do not want it visible to camera. And there we go. So now we got rid of that nasty spill light. And what we could do is bump up the intensity of the light. So now we're having some beautiful action happening there. All right. As you can see, my ground, I kind of made it rough but reflective. Probably going to turn down that bump amount so that way it's more reflective than anything. So let's see what this does. 2. And I'm going to make this kind of like 30. There we go. All right, so that's looking kind of cool. So now it's just a matter of, personal opinions of what you want to do. So what you can do too is just add your own creative type of shape to it if you want. So we're going to go right there. Go to the top view. And we're just going to move these around in 3D space. Like so. All right. And then actually what I am going to do is, this might look cooler, it might not. Let's kind of make this fly towards the camera. Like so. And move it down. I'm going to create a brand new copy of the Vray light. Turn that off. And actually, no, I'm going to turn it on, but I'm going to put a fall off into it. Let's see what would happen. You just play with this. Make it a little see-through, as you can see. Just going to create probably like a green light on here. Just to see what we get. I'm going to turn on some lens effects. Get some glow happening. See what would happen if we just turn that off. That's kind of fun. Now we just got to move it around a little bit. So we get some interesting shapes on the car. I'm not sure if having it come towards the camera is doing anything good. All right, we'll just kind of add a little more shape to it like this. Let's see what red would look like. About yellow. see, pinkish tones. No. I think something like green looks nice. I'm just gonna tone it down a notch. Turn fall off back on. There we go. Now I'm gonna do another little shape. This one, instead of it being a square, I'm just gonna create a radial one. 115. It's gonna be like just a little hairline type of shape. That's the thing, is you could hide them, you could leave it open. This video is kind of just to show the concept of light painting in 3D, but then it's really up to you to how you want to create your images. And then the other thing, what you can do is, again, create different types of shapes. You could do text. But the idea is, when you have these types of lines and shapes, that's how you create the visual look of light painting. Use these streaky shapes. Let's see if we change this color to something else. Let's see what blue would look like. There we go. That could look interesting. Yeah, a little orange type of feel. Now what I'm going to do is just duplicate the shape as a copy. Now I'm just going to move this up like so. Just move this so it's flying up from behind the car on the other side. Like that. Make it come from underneath. Something like this. Then if you turn on depth of field on the camera, that's going to add some nice separation between the car and some of these foreground elements. Like so. All right, now what I'll do is I'm going to turn on the headlights. Typically, I would put a Vray light inside of these, but for the sake of this quick little tutorial, I'm just gonna throw material on it and call it a day. Do the same thing on the other one. There we go. All right. Gonna probably just move this one out like that, so it's away from the camera and the car's open. So what I want to do here is I want to add an obvious separation between these lines. I want them to break, so something like that, so we get some clear difference in the two. So then you could add particle systems to really have fun with it. This is where you could really just do what you want to do with light painting. And I would recommend looking up reference of what photographers are doing out there, and that will help you kind of get an idea of what is a normal way of using light painting and what is not. What we're doing here is just really just going at it. Not really the best execution of a well done light painting shot. However, it is definitely the style of light painting. And then sometimes with my light painting, what I like to do is add strobes as fill lights. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm adding a little disc light to really make the sheet metal pop. So kind of like that. I'm gonna uncheck effect reflections since I just want the specular highlight to pop on that. And then the hood's getting a little dead, so I'm just gonna copy the light ahead, throw it on top, do a little overhead fill like this, and I like what it's doing to show off the body line design of the headlight area. It is getting a little too intense for my liking, so just tone it down a notch. And what I will do is change the size of it, give me a little more fill. It's not as big of a highlight. And then what I'll probably do is copy it one more time over to the rear end of the car, like so. Make sure that's invisible. And that, in a nutshell, is a sloppy way of light painting in V-Ray. And then just render in, retouch away. So I'll just change the output spec and do a quick little render for the YouTube cover. But hopefully it kind of shared some information of how you could go about it. I know this execution isn't really the best in terms of elegance and how clean the image looks, but the idea is definitely what I would do if I was to work on a real shot. So in terms of any secrets held out, there are none. This is the real deal of how I would do it. But probably turn that off. Let's see what that does. Well, I like that. Just another little light source. All right, there you go.